right, so let's start with what happened in last night's episode with Carver and Tori and their breakup. I'm curious, do you really think that Carver thought that Tori would be waiting for him after shift, or do you think he knew, like, deep down that he was essentially breaking up with her with that conversation?
Right. I think it's like the facts are in your head, but like what are you there physically and mentally? You know what I mean? Like you understand like where you're at, but are you ready to be like, done? You know what I mean? So I think it was a little bit of like I think it was a little bit of like I think we both know what's happening here, but I'm hoping that you're still here. I'm not ready quite yet to say goodbye.
Yeah.
It was really hard to get a read on Carver as he was walking through the apartment last night, kind of, reading the fact that she was gone. So, where is his head at? Is he relieved? Is he upset? Is he all of the things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good question, right? I think there's a lot of stuff going on there. There's this person who's been a kind of a staple in his life, through his early formative years, a person who was there through some pretty traumatic events in his life, and then came back at another kind of, I wouldn't call it traumatic, but another, vulnerable place in his life. So while I think there's some awareness that like the road he and her were on was a dangerous one that could jeopardize his career and this new family that he has, I think there's also the fact that this person has been there for him. So I think it's mixed emotions. I think that's the hardest part. Is like, is there relief? I don't know. Maybe. I think so, and at the same time, is there also a situation where you're like, oh man, this thing felt good, for better or worse. It felt good. It felt comfortable. It felt like something he knew.
Yeah. So do you think that if she had been waiting for him in the apartment when he'd gotten back after shift, that he would have just kept going and they would have just still been together and that would have kept going? Or no, that was kind of like he knew it was time to end things.
Yeah, so I don't know if it would have just kept going, but I don't think he was expecting her to be gone. You know what I mean? It felt
Okay.
like the beginning of the potential end more than like, oh, this is it. So I think there is some shock for sure. But as far as him continuing on, I'd like to give him a little more. I mean, who knows? Like that's
Yeah.
kind of up to you guys, I guess. But like, I think in my head, I'd like to give him a little more, like a little more fortitude, and his decision, like recognition of self worth and like what is putting him at jeopardy in the grander scheme. Um, yeah, it's a good question.
Yeah. The motto of our podcast the past couple of weeks has been what happened in Texas. It's been it's in the recurring question that we ask every week. And so I know you did an interview with TV Line recently and you mentioned that you do have some theories. Are you able to share any of them with us?
I mean, I have theories. Again, I don't know. Like nothing's been told to me concrete. We just know that he went back, and what do we know? I mean, if you look back at the end of last season, you we had a situation at the kitchen fire where some very close to home things were happening. A younger brother being abused by a father and an older brother, verbally and physically in that situation. And I think that response, the way he responded to the father and the situation with Violet, led him to like feel like taking responsibility was there. So I think that's where I see it. I think he went back, tried to have a conversation with his folks, with his dad specifically, and I don't think it was welcomed with warm arms, or open arms. I think there was a little bit more. What are we talking about this for? This is old type situation. So is there more to that? Probably, but I think that's what it was. And then to go back with this vulnerable place to these people who have taken advantage of your vulnerability in the past and have them do it once more, I think it just sent him in a spiral. And who was there to catch him in the midst of that spiral but a person who likes the spiral? So I think that's never been given to me. That's just the world that I believe has happened. So it could change. We could learn new things, but that's what I think happened. I think he went back there and found out that, oh man, things aren't what I hoped. In fact, there's not much here for me. So I'm just gonna burn it down a little bit.
Yeah. So when he came back, obviously from that time in Texas, you know, he's kind of been in his head a little bit. He's kind of been a little moody and all that stuff. And Stella kind of gave him a wake up call last week of like, it's kind of now or never. You kind of, you know, don't come back unless you're ready to work. Do you think that's what he needed in order to kind of get himself out of his head? Or do you think he eventually would have gotten there by himself?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's so funny to me, like the point of view from the outside is always like, why is he so moody? Why is he like so like why is he being mean to Violet? And like as his portrayer, as the person who fights for him, I'm like, you are protecting yourself. Like this person, like by all means, there's better ways to protect oneself. But you are protecting yourself. You know, I mean, he's protecting himself. He's had to deal with like coming to a place that is like boundaryless a lot of times, which, you know, is not always healthy in a workplace. But at this firehouse, it works out because it is a family. And open up to those people, you know, especially through Stella, you know, his lieutenant who he trusts, who he believes has his best interest at heart. And to get into that position and then have it come back to bite him, you know, when he falls for someone. I think there's a lot of struggle there. It's like, maybe my boundaries were good. Maybe the fact that I kept some distance was a good thing. And I think that's what he leans back into. Obviously, maybe a little too far, maybe a little too isolated. You know, if you don't have someone around you that you trust to be like, hey, your stuff is going the wrong direction. You need that observer, right? So if you don't have that, it's easy to kind of spiral out of control, especially if you and this other person are feeding each other's issues. So being isolated like that, I think, has been a problem. I think the last few episodes, we've really seen that with him. And I do think there's some awareness coming to him. Like just the fact that you sleep through bells is pretty amazing, but it happens. That's a real life thing. People do that on the job because it's a hard job. You know, you're up late, your body's exhausted, or you've mishandled how you prepared to start that shift that day. And someone has to wake you up. And in this case, I think what hits home for him the most is that it's kid. You know, she's saying, hey, like, this isn't a maybe. This isn't, oh, you know, hopefully you get your stuff. It's like, no, I know who you are. I know who you can be. Your potential is high. You're not living up to your potential. What are you going to do to make that right? Are you going to step up? And I think that's an important piece. I mean, I think we see those aspects of him being like, yeah, I knew this was a thing. I need to start making my own choices here. And that's what he does. Like, she's not there every day, you know, saying, hey, don't go out and party late. Like he's made those choices. We saw that in this episode. He's made the choices to like make a priority.
Yeah. Do you think he's fully gained Stella's trust back, or do you think that there's maybe more to go?
I think there's more to go. I mean, I don't, you know, he's, you know, those things aren't easily returned when you're returned from when you're dealing with life or death. Like, these people have to trust you to have their back in the midst of life or death situations, and you're responsible for lives in the world who are at stake. So I think the proof will be in the pudding. Like, actions speak louder than words. As much as him coming up and saying, hey, this is where I want to be, expect me to be here, I think she's right to be like, hey, okay, hopefully.
Yeah. So now that Tori's gone, should we expect Carver to go straight back to fighting for Violet, or is he kind of going to be on his own for a little bit?
Good question. I kind of want to pose that to you all. Like, what do you think is like the best way to do that? Like, do you think it would be good for him to just like go right back to it, or is it better to like find a more interesting way, like a more, maybe not interesting, but a more like healthy way? Like, what would be best for him? You know what I mean? I would love your opinion. What do you think?
Oh, that's a great question.
Because yeah, I mean, we talk about this every week on the pod.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gina.
Wow. I know, I wasn't expecting that. So I'm like, wait a second, let me think about this. I mean, I think for him, as somebody who watches the show, does not portray anybody, I would probably like absorb the breakup a little bit, take some time, and just say, okay, that happened. What did I learn from it? I got through it. And then kind of see where Violet's at and move forward accordingly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right,
I was gonna say something kind of similar, because I mean, she's even trying to like move on and kind of figure out her life outside of Carver. And so I think it would be a lot if he just like next episode or, when we come back from break is like, hey, I'm here again. And she's like, whoa, hold on a second. So I definitely think for him, I think it would be good just to like see where she falls, see where he falls, and kind of eventually maybe find their way back. But
yeah. I mean,
I don't think it would show a lot of growth if it wouldn't show any growth if he immediately was like, F you, Flynn, what's up, Violet? I'm back.
Yeah, I agree. I think, I hope, you know what I mean? I'm going to put my the last couple episodes that we've shot glasses on and give you where I was at when I first read this episode. And my hope is that he is able to, really grow. Like you said, like he has to grow from this. Otherwise you're destined to make the same mistakes. Right. So how does he grow? I think the thing that I'm excited for the audience to see is like how he does it. We have some really awesome ways that he grows and shows that he's not the same person he was. And then it's like, how does one fortify that, right? How do you fortify healthy decisions? Is it like the up and up forever? Or is that there a little like stumble here and then regain, I hope it's not perfect. You know what I mean? Like, I hope it's a road that is a little rough and that we see the recognition of the reality of the world is like when you're coming back from something like that, where someone sent you down the road of like almost losing your job, like, you're not going to be like, oh, here it is. This is the answer. This is how we do this. Right. No, you're going to be like, okay, well, I need to fix that. And then within that, you find, oh, this is the other thing that I'm struggling with. Okay. So I hope, again, in my rewound glasses phase, I hope he's able to like grow in a way that is authentic. I think in television land, it's easy for things to be convenient. And one thing that I've been really happy with about this show being on it is like nothing's convenient. Like it's real life, authentic. Like, how would a person go through this? You know what I mean? So I don't think that really probably answers your question as specifically as you would have liked me to, but to answer it. But that's where I would be. Like, if I was in your shoes, that's what I would want to see from Carver and his portrayer. I think it would be a little too convenient for it to go back to Violet. And like, what kind of crazy person would do that? Like, maybe he does, you know what I mean? And that would be fun. I think it would give Violet an opportunity to be like, bro, it's like throw his words back in his face. This hot and cold thing is giving me whiplash. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like she should throw it right back in his face. So we'll see. I hope you guys like where it's going. I like where it's going. And I hope it's satisfying to the viewers.
For sure.
Great. And you did allude to the way Carver's going to grow in the next couple of episodes. We know in the mid-season finale, he takes care of a dog. What can you tease about that?
What can I tease about that? I think that's about as much as I can tease about it. He ends up caring for a dog. But I think, what's interesting is how we start to see how his isolation isolation from the rest of the firehouse comes to light. Like, what do people know? What do people not know? Which speaks to him as a person in the firehouse and his struggle with like creating too tough of boundaries and too lax of boundaries, So I think you're going to be happily surprised at how a new entity comes into his life and helps him grow, for sure.
That's awesome. Obviously with Carver and Violet seems comes a lot of working with Hanako. What's it like working with her so closely?
Oh man, Hanako's great. She's such an open person. I mean that in an actor way, in a human way. She's caring. She steps up to the plate when it comes to like, going toe to toe. Like that end of that episode, end of the finale last season wouldn't have been the same if we hadn't like been able to go at each other. And as actors, like that's something that I really enjoy, being able to like take the gloves off and really go head to head, toe to toe, and fight for what your character needs or what they think they need in that moment. And she's always willing to do that. She also has such she brings such a strong, like no BS attitude to Violet, which I love. I think it's also one of the reasons why in another world potentially, or in this world, I'm not going to tell you. Like they could make a really good couple. You know what I mean? Because Sam has his own BS detector. Like he's quick to like call people out and maybe too quick at times to throw hands. And I think she's a good balance for him because not only is she willing to throw energetically and probably physically hands, she's also willing to say, hey, here's the mirror. Like, what are you talking about? Are you willing to step up in this moment the way you should, or are you gonna go down a road that you shouldn't? Like, I think he's good for her because he forces her to like move through emotions that she's not good with, because he's not afraid. Like once he's in a thing, he's willing to say pretty much anything. He's willing to put it all on the table. So I think there's a really cool balance there, and she brings so much of that to Violet. You know what I mean? So much of the character is her being willing to like push the boundaries of what a paramedic could be and what their limits, someone could see their limits as. She does such a great job at allowing us to see a very human version of that world.
Nice. There's been a lot of talk this season about promotions within the CFD and within the firehouse. Where do you think Carver's at in terms of his end game with his career? Is he kind of in the moment right now, or do you think being a lieutenant could be on his radar at some point?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think, there's plenty of firefighters in the real world that firefight. Even if they become a lieutenant, they stay or not a lieutenant, but they'll just stay firefighters the whole time. They don't want to go up that scale, because as you go up that scale in the real world, you lose some of the action. So like some of them want to be firefighters, like Tony on our show, who was a real firefighter who retired last year. He was a firefighter. He was on squad, which is a specific group of firefighters, kind of the elite force when it comes to special rescue. But he was a firefighter the whole time. He never became a lieutenant or a captain or a chief. You know what I mean? So I think it's a balance. I think for Carver, I think there's a certain aspect of him that is like innately a leader. Like he's willing to lead with actions. He's willing to step up. I think he's a hell of a firefighter. I think he knows how to do the job. He's very much someone who is a professional. Like he understands the gravity of every situation he walks into, and he's willing to do it without question, to his own detriment, which I think is very, very indicative of people that are on the CFD and firefighters everywhere. Is like they recognize the value of their life, and they recognize the value of their actions, and how sometimes their actions will overwhelm the value of their life because they know there's other lives on the other side of that. And I think that's Carver. I think he's that kind of firefighter. He's willing to stick his arm into a burning room and drag somebody out, as the first episode talked about that he was in. Yeah, being a lieutenant, I don't know if it's innately in his future, but I could see it happening for sure. Question is like how, where. Hopefully, in my opinion, it's at Firehouse 51 somehow. But what does that mean? Who's not a lieutenant at that point? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of things that could happen in that regard. So right now, like I think he loves the action. So if that means not being a lieutenant, that may be the best option for him.
Yeah. And so we just have one last question. So it was just announced that you guys are doing the first Big 3 show crossover for the first time since 2019. So since this will be your first one, is there anyone from PD or Med you're hoping you get scenes with?
Man, I'm hoping to get scenes with any of them, to be honest. Like there's so many great actors, so many fresh faces and great actors on those shows. Yeah. I would be happy to work with any of them. PD comes on after us, so like I see a little bit more of their show than I do Med, but it's such a great universe, both of them. And I'm excited that, just the way Wolf and NBC does their crossovers, like it's a 3-hour event, like, not necessarily even a handoff. You know what I mean? It's a really cool world, and that's exciting to be a part of. I don't have a specific person. Like when you work with people, when you have the potential to work with people who have been doing this for over a decade, it's always a pleasure. I think it'd be cool for like the newer faces to work together. Like Benjamin, Ben on PD would be cool. Like I know him, so it'd be cool to work with him, via the shows. But I'd be happy to be working with any of them.
That's so cool. Have you seen the last one?
The last PD?
The last crossover.
No, I haven't. No, I'm gonna have to check it out. I think it was that the one about the viral outbreak or something like that? Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I hear it's pretty great. I'm gonna have to check it out and make sure I know what I'm getting myself into.
Yeah, it's really
It's
good.
great. It's
Yeah.
great.
Well, that's all we
The
had.
energy on both of your guys' faces when you're just like thinking back to it is awesome. So it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, it's
It
kind of
was,
crazy that it just
yeah.
happened like in fall of 2019 and then COVID happens,
Mhm.
a few months
Wow.
later. So it's kind of like, oh, well, they predicted that one pretty accurately.
Well,
So
life imitating art a little too
yeah.
a little too
A little
closely.
too well.
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was crazy, but
Yeah.
we're excited too. It'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, what do you what's your favorite part of a crossover? Like you guys, like how do you like obviously there's the innate actions of it, but like for me when I think of a crossover, I'm like, man, this is like a 3 hour movie. We're about to get to watch a 3 hour movie. And I love movies. Like I love going and just enjoying like the experience of like losing yourself in the real world and going into this new world, whether it be, post-apocalyptic or a romantic comedy or whatever it is. What do you like about those?
I think it's just seeing everyone interact who obviously doesn't get to interact. And I think especially with that last one they did, you truly didn't know, like, even though you're technically watching the med hour, like, you don't really feel like you're watching med. You feel like you're just watching all of them interact and go. And I think that's what stood out about that one specifically. So I'm excited to see them do it again because I think that was my personally favorite part.
Yeah. It's exactly
That's
what you said, like immersing
Yeah.
yourself and kind of losing yourself for 3 hours. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm excited
I'm
for this
sure.
one. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited. I have all the popcorn.
Cool.
Awesome.
Well,
Well,
yeah,
Jake, that's all we
go ahead.
have. So thank you so
Yeah.
much for talking to us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Happy to be a part of it. You guys are great. We all appreciate, your willingness to like follow the show, be an audience. Like without you guys and without the rest of the audience, we don't have a job and we don't have an opportunity to tell stories. So thank you so much for like staying committed to the show and the stories and trusting us to give you just the right amount of drama every week.
Oh, it's our pleasure. But thank you. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Of course.